Hello and welcome to this Edexcel GCSE 9-1 Business Grade Booster revision video. In this video we are going to be predominantly looking at 6-mark Analyse questions as well as revising key content from the advanced information and specification, and we will also be focusing on exam skills ready for your second paper. So to get warmed up, we are going to complete a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 activity, and you will have the time it takes for the music to stop to answer the 5 questions on the next slide. So good luck.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So hopefully you've had a go at each of those questions, and we'll take a look at the answers. So let's take a look at the answers to the first question. So we have 5 stages of the sales process, and these are product knowledge, customer engagement, speed and efficiency of service, customer feedback, and post-sale service. So well done if you've got all those correct. So the second question related to 4 stages of the product life cycle. So these are introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. You may have research and development as well, so that is perfectly valid if you have that point. So well done again if you have all 4 of those stages. The next question was asking you for 3 elements of the design mix, and these are economic manufacture or cost, function, and aesthetics. Now, in the last 3 exam series, there has been a question on the design mix. So either a short answer, 3-mark explain question, or a multiple choice question. So commonly assessed topic, make sure you revise this carefully. Next question was asking for 2 types of organisational structure. So these are hierarchical or tall, where there's many layers in the hierarchy, or a flat organisational structure where there are few layers of management in the hierarchy. So there is a shorter chain of command but wider spans of control. So lots of key terms linked to this topic area that you need to revise. So the last question relates to one financial ratio, and you could have had either gross profit margin or the net profit margin. Both are included in the advanced information, so you need to be able to calculate both of these calculations confidently, ready for your exam on Monday. So you must know the formulae for both and their meanings. So the gross profit margin is gross profit over sales revenue times 100, and the net profit margin is the net profit divided by sales revenue times 100. So well done if you've got all those knowledge questions correct. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, we are going to be predominantly focusing on 6-mark Analyse questions today to make sure that you fully understand how to meet the assessment objectives successfully to maximise your marks in this question type. Now, just before I go through Analyse questions, it's worth pointing out that there is a discuss question that appears at the end of section A, which is also a 6-mark question, and you can answer that in exactly the same way as a 6-mark Analyse question. The only difference is that because it appears in section A, there are no marks available for AO2 application. Instead, there are marks available for AO1B understanding. So you must show really strong understanding of the topic area in the question for that particular type of question, as well as show in-depth analysis or a detailed chain of argument in your response as well to reach that top level of the mark scheme. So in terms of analysis, the same principles apply for a 6-mark Analyse question and a 6-mark discuss question. So for the 6-mark Analyse question, there are 2 assessment objectives being assessed: AO2 application and AO3A analysis. Both assessment objectives are worth an equal amount of marks, so 3 marks each. And how the examiner will mark your response is he or she will look at the answer in its entirety, look how much context is in there, decide on the level for then application, and then he or she will do the same for analysis. If there is good quality analysis, 5 strands in the chain of argument, then you will reach the top level of the mark scheme for that assessment objective. If there's good quality context all the way through, again, you will reach the top level for application, and therefore your answer will fit into that bracket. So level 3, and you'll be awarded, dependent on the quality of the context and analysis, either 5 or 6 marks. So remember, your answer is marked holistically, but the examiner will look for both of those skills to determine the overall level. And once the level is decided, the mark will then be decided by the examiner as well. So there are different types of Analyse questions, such as analyse the benefit or likely benefit, analyse the drawback, analyse the advantage or analyse the disadvantage, or analyse the impact or analyse the effect. Now, it's important to remember you can include 1 or 2 points in your answer. This is your choice. So if you want to include 1 point because you feel really confident in terms of explaining that point, that is absolutely fine. However, if you can think of 2 points that are relevant to the question, then include those and make sure you can develop both of those. For impact and effect questions, either a positive or a negative point can be given. There is no need to include both unless you wish to, and you've decided to include 2 points in your response. So therefore, for an analyse the impact question, you could include, if you decide to go down the 2-point route, 2 positives, 2 negatives, or a positive and a negative. That's entirely up to you. And that's the same principle for a discuss question as well. So the key to success in a 6-mark Analyse question is to meet the assessment objectives, as I've mentioned already. And to do this, you need to include good quality context throughout your response, and not just in the first sentence, all the way through. And good quality context means you use a variety of different contexts that is taken from the case study. So hopefully when you've read the case study, instead of underlining everything or highlighting lots of different points, you are annotating the case study as well. Because if you do that, you can then go back and tick off the bits of context that you've used, and that will help you to use a variety of different aspects from the case study in your answer, which is exactly what the examiner is looking for. You need to show the examiner you understand the situation facing the firm, so use context effectively to build your argument. You also need to show that you have analysed in a detailed chain of argument. So, as I mentioned, you need to include 5 strands of analysis. These must be evident to reach level 3. Now you can have those 5 strands of analysis attached to one point, so the strands are counted up after the point has been made, or you can include those 5 strands of analysis and they can be split across your 2 points. So that's up to you how you decide to split them. So it could be after your first point you include 1 strand of analysis, but then after your second point you include 4 strands. That is entirely fine. But you need to make sure you count up, because that is what the examiner will be doing to see if you hit that top level of the mark scheme for that assessment objective. So the key to flag to the examiner that you are showing an interconnected strand of analysis is to use connectives. So connectives are words or phrases such as this means that, therefore, which in turn, as a result. Make sure your chains of argument are logical and no steps are missing. So for example, if a business is bringing out a new product, don't just jump to more profit. Think about why there might be more profit in the long run, for example, and put all those steps in between in your chain of argument. A lack of context is a common weakness seen in student responses. Remember, you will not get context marks from repeating any information in the question or in the name of the business or the name of the person running the business. It's got to be good quality context, as I've mentioned, from the case study. Remember, you must also show distinct understanding of the topic area in the question in your answer. Make sure your answer is relevant to the topic area in the question and it's not a vague response. So to help you understand how examiners assess the skill of application, we can look here at the marking grid that examiners use when they are assessing your answers. So in order to reach level 3 for application, you need good quality context throughout the whole of your response. If you are hitting level 2, you are showing sound application, which means perhaps you've used 2 examples from the case study. And then level 1 is basic application, perhaps with 1 example. So using this as a guide will help you to know how to reach that top level of the mark scheme in your context. So you need to use more than 2 examples. So let's take a look at the mark scheme in light of analysis this time. So to reach level 3 of the mark scheme for analysis, as I mentioned, you need to have at least 5 strands of analysis. 5 strands is enough as long as they are good quality. So you might want to include 6, so 6 lots of connectives, just in case one of your strands of analysis isn't quite strong enough to be awarded, and then that 6th one can act as a contingency. If there's 2 to 4 strands of analysis, then you would hit the level 2 bracket for that assessment objective. And then if there is 1 strand, you would be hitting level 1. So as I mentioned, what the examiner would do is look at the response and assess each of those assessment objectives in turn. So if there are 5 good quality strands of analysis, so interconnected strands, following 1 point, it's answering the question set, so it's all correct, that would hit level 3 for analysis. However, if there is no context there at all, so no reference to the case study, the maximum number of marks that answer could be awarded would be 3 out of 6, because it would achieve 0 marks for application, but 6 marks for analysis, and therefore a line of best fit would be drawn, and that would be 3 out of 6 because only one of the assessment objectives had been met. So bear that in mind when you're writing your answers. Check the number of strands, but check you've got good quality context throughout your answer as well. So we're going to be having a look at a 6-mark Analyse question in light of this case study, which is linked to Qantas. So I'm going to read through the case study with you, and then what I would like you to do is to think about the key aspects of this case study. So the bits of the context that you would underline and highlight, and also annotate. So remember, I mentioned previously that if you annotate, it's really good practice, because when you're writing your responses really quickly in the exam, you can then go back to the case study and look at your own notes. Tick off those bits of the case study or context that you've extracted, and that will show to the examiner that you've used a variety of different pieces of the case study in your answer. So try and use at least 3 pieces in your response in order to hit the top level of that mark scheme. Remember, the name of the product or the name of the business is not good enough for context. So Qantas, the national airline of Australia, has announced that from 2025 it will be the first airline ever to start operating non-stop flights from Sydney to London. So the national airline means it's a large business. This would be the longest flight in the world. This move has been a key objective of Qantas for the last 5 years, so it's always worth picking out if there's an objective in the case study, so highlight that, because you can always link your analysis to the objective. And the longest flight in the world, that would act as a USP. So just from those first couple of sentences, you can see here that there's a lot of information that you can extract. So there's actually 3 sentences, but you've got the objective, the size of the business, and its USP. In order to meet this objective, the company has bought 12 jet aircraft capable of flying direct to any city in the world. Each of these planes will have roomier seats and a well-being zone with a self-service snack bar and a space for stretching and movement. Customer comfort and satisfaction will be a top priority on this journey, as it will take just under 20 hours to complete. As such, high-quality digital entertainment and food will be offered to all of the 238 customers who will be able to board each flight. This will help Qantas to attract and retain customers in the highly competitive airline market. So you can see here the type of market it is. You may know that from general knowledge, but highlight that. Look at always how much competition there is in the market. And again, you can see another key objective of the business is linked to customer satisfaction. And there's lots of examples of how they're going to ensure their customers are happy on this flight. Today, this journey would involve a stop, usually in the Middle East, for refueling, and would take approximately 23 hours at best to complete. The whole process is often seen as inconvenient by customers. However, as yet, Qantas has not announced how much each passenger will pay to fly on this route. The investment in the planes will run into millions at a time when the business and the whole industry is recovering from the effects of COVID-19, when people were unable to travel freely. So we can see here about the cost. It's going to cost the business millions, so that's key information. And there's an external factor here, COVID-19, which has affected that industry. So look out for that type of information as well, and extract that from the case study and annotate it. So we're going to be looking at this question. Analyse the impact to Qantas of launching non-stop flights from Sydney to London. And obviously it's a 6-mark question because the command word is analyse. So before we take a look at that question in a bit more depth, we're going to complete 2 30-second challenges. So you've got the time it takes for the music to stop, so 30 seconds to come up with 2 examples of product differentiation. So good luck. So hopefully you've had enough time to come up with 2 examples. So we'll take a look at the answers on the next slide. So the 2 examples that we have of product differentiation are unique selling point and brand image. So well done if you've got those 2 examples as well. So our next 30-second challenge is give me 2 benefits of product differentiation. So if you think of the examples of product differentiation that we've already covered, so unique selling point and brand image, think about why they might be a benefit to a business. So I need a benefit about a USP and a benefit linked to a brand. So good luck. Okay, so hopefully you've been able to come up with 2 benefits of product differentiation linked to the USP and the brand. So we'll take a look at the answers on the next slide. So the 2 benefits that we have of product differentiation, and I'd like you to compare them with your own ideas, are in terms of the USP. It will attract customers if the USP is viewed positively. And we're going to look at USP in light of the next activity, which is focused on the 6-mark question that I mentioned previously. In terms of the brand, higher prices can be charged as people aspire to be associated with a particular brand. For example, products that are designers, for example, Gucci products, can be sold at very high prices because people want to own those particular products because they want to be linked to that particular brand. So our next activity is our chains of analysis activity, and I'm going to show you on the next slide 6 different statements, and what I would like you to do is to rearrange these sentences or statements to form a chain of analysis that is answering our 6-mark question. Just to remind you, the question was, analyse the impact to Qantas of launching non-stop flights from Sydney to London. So we're looking at just 1 point this time, but we're looking for the 5 interconnected strands of analysis following that point. So it is a logical chain of reasoning. So as you can see, there's 6 different statements or sentences or part sentences. And what I'd like you to do in a moment is to pause the video, read through each of the sentences or part sentences and decide on the correct order and jot those numbers down. So what you're looking for is to create a logical, detailed chain of argument which is in context, which is answering the question set. So to give you a clue, number 6 is the first point, so the first sentence. So what one impact is that it will act as a unique selling point for Qantas. So read through the other 5 statements and decide on the order. Look at the grammar because that will give you a clue as to the order of some of the statements. And once you've done that, restart the video and then I'll talk through the final answer on the next slide. So hopefully you have the same order that we have on screen. So as I mentioned, one impact is that it will act as a unique selling point for Qantas. So the question is, what is the impact? Analyse the impact to Qantas of launching non-stop flights from Sydney to London. So our point is it's going to act as a USP for the business. Now, why is this the case? This is because, so this is our first connective. This is because it is the first airline, so context taken from the case study, to start operating non-stop flights between 2 cities. This may lead to, so we have another connective here, an increase in the number of bookings with the airline. So we have context because you make a booking with an airline, and therefore that would put it in context of that particular case study. As, so that's connective, customers who currently travel between Sydney and London. So that again is taken from the case study, but it's not highlighted in green here because it's in the question. So it wouldn't be classed as application. So just watch out for that. Often find it inconvenient for planes to stop and refuel. As a result, so we've got another connective here, customer loyalty may increase, which is important as, so we've got a lovely connective, the airline market is highly competitive. So remember, I referred to that earlier when we talked through the case study. Always look at how competitive the market is, and Qantas will want to make as many sales as possible in order to retain or improve its market share. Now, if you wanted to add another step in the chain of argument, you could then link that to the fact that the industry has been affected by COVID and therefore it would want high sales. So that is showing a detailed chain of argument. Following on from one point, there is context all the way through. Remember, we're looking for at least 3 pieces of context, and we've got nice connectives that are following on from the previous interconnected strand or the point. It's a logical chain of argument, and we've got a valid point that is answering the question set. And that's what you need to aim to do when you're answering 6-mark Analyse questions. So our last activity in this video is going to be you completing a plan for this particular question. So it's another Analyse question based on the same case study for Qantas, and the question is analyse the benefit. So this time it's analyse the benefit, whereas last time it was analyse the impact. So remember, with impact you could have had a negative or a positive point. Now I chose to focus on the USP, so a positive point. However, you might have focused on the negative point about how expensive it was going to be for the airline. Here we are looking at just the benefit. So if you choose to include 2 points, you need to include 2 distinct benefits. If you're including 1 point, then you just include 1 benefit. You don't need balance in your answer. You don't need to include a drawback. But what you must have is 5 interconnected strands of analysis that is linked to the point or the points. So in a moment, what I'd like you to do is to pause the video and have a go at coming up with a plan for this question. So analyse the benefit to Qantas of providing excellent customer service to its passengers. So you might want to go back and re-look at the case study again. Remember, in that middle paragraph there was lots of information about how Qantas was going to make sure that their customers were happy on that really long 20-hour flight. Once you're happy with your plan, then restart the video and I'll talk through a suggested response on the next slide. So hopefully you've come up with a plan or some thoughts about this particular question, and you can compare your thoughts to our suggested response. So we've gone for 2 points. You might have just done 1 point. That is absolutely fine. The key is to make sure you haven't included more than 2 points, and you've got 5 interconnected strands across those 2 points if you've gone for that route, or you have 5 interconnected strands after the first point or your only point if you've chosen to go for that route instead. Remember, you're looking for good quality context all the way through, coupled with that analysis. So those 5 strands will mean that you'll hit level 3 of the mark scheme every time for a 6-mark Analyse question. So let's take a look. So our point is the airline will gain a strong reputation. So that's text in purples highlighting the knowledge linked to the topic area in the question in its market for providing excellent customer service. So why is that good? This is because customer engagement. So customer service, if you think about the sales process that we looked at in the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 activity, there were 5 elements to that. So we talked about the post-sale service, customer engagement, speed and efficiency of service, customer feedback, and product knowledge. So you can choose any of those features to focus on in terms of customer service. So I've chosen customer engagement, and because I've put that into my answer, the examiner knows that I know about customer service. So always bear that in mind. It's really easy on a customer service question to just write generally. Make sure that you show that you understand what customer service is in your response. So this is because customer engagement will be high, as Qantas will be offering a wellbeing zone as well as high quality food and entertainment on this route. This will lead to an increase in the number of passengers wishing to travel with Qantas. So in those two interconnected strands here, we can see the benefit of the strong reputation being developed and explored in our strands, but we've also explained our point in that first strand. As a result, ticket sales will increase. So just that word ticket will help you to get context. So we're not just talking about sales. Shoehorning a little bit of extra context into the response will lift your marks for application. This is important as Qantas will be keen to cover the millions invested in this route with high sales. So you can see here we've got 4 interconnected strands following on from the initial point. We've got strong knowledge of customer service, fantastic application to the case study, and we've used a mixture of connectives. So we haven't hit the top level of the mark scheme yet for analysis because we need another interconnected strand. So I've included a second point. So allow Qantas to differentiate itself from other airlines through focusing on customer comfort and satisfaction on its 20-hour flights. So again, lovely context that is taken from the case study in the initial point or the second point here. That's what you need to try to do, because remember there's no knowledge and understanding marks specifically for Analyse questions. So if you can take the point from the case study, you'll get off the mark straight away for gaining some marks for this particular question. So this is a benefit as it will give Qantas a competitive advantage over other airlines flying from Sydney to London, which have to stop to refuel. So that interconnected strand follows on from the second point, and overall you can see with the amount of green text we have lots and lots of context. We've got our 5 interconnected strands, we've shown understanding of customer service, our points are relevant, so overall this answer would reach the top level of the mark scheme. So hopefully you have something similar. Now, as I said, you might have decided just to include 1 point, absolutely fine. And this concludes this video for Edexcel GCSE 9-1 Business, where we've been looking specifically at Analyse questions today, but also we have touched upon discuss questions as well. So this hopefully will put you in good stead for answering any Analyse questions, or the 2 Analyse questions and the 1 discuss question that you will see when you answer your questions in the future exam paper.